sharing screen again.
Okay, thank you.
Was that me or you?
I think it was your screen. I think you froze.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for rolling with the punches. This is real life. This is trying to have conversations and work with technology in this day and age. Okay, so back to the other slide. We're still on the one prior.
Okay. Nope, one more. Okay.
There we go. Okay. So the second bullet point being just kind of mentally have a plan. So hopefully we can share some content with you of some specific things to say and maybe some things to stay away from when communicating with your children about all of these things, but also just really try your best to create an environment where questions are welcome, feelings are shared openly. Have a plan, but we all have children and know that conversations are taken drastically different directions than we would have anticipated. So something to keep in mind. The next bullet point I have here is project calm. So I would say that this is also one of the most significant things to keep in mind when you're communicating with your children. So it really is our job as parents to protect and shield our children from the panic and from the high levels of anxiety. Children are extremely perceptive at a very young age, and they pick up on our verbal and nonverbal cues. If I could kind of just have you think of a metaphor. So if you were on a flight, we'll say a couple months ago, a year ago, and the pilot cut into the flight and said, there's some turbulence up ahead. I need everybody to put on their seatbelts, stay in their seats. They acknowledged that, clearly this isn't the flight you had anticipated. You're not going to get your snacks or your drinks. That's disappointing. However, they maintained, a calm, clear, fact-based disposition. The flight attendants were calmly walking back and buckling up in their seats. You would have probably some feelings, maybe a little nervousness, but your experience would be dramatically different if the pilot got on in a panicked state and was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. This has never happened before. I mean, imagine your experience and your anxiety on that flight. And then you turn to the flight attendants and they're in the back whispering loudly about every worst case scenario that could possibly take place. I mean, your experience would be quite different. And our children are in kind of a similar boat, just as if when we're in an airplane, we're putting it all up in someone else's hands. Our care and protection is in the hands of the pilot, just as our children are in our hands. So it really is our job to try our best to, fake it till you make it with a sense of calm, even if on the inside you are feeling more a sense of panic. The next talking points that I have here is really just to let their questions be your guide. As I said prior, having an environment where kids feel open to ask questions is most important. Validate their feelings. So this is not just COVID-19 specific. This can really be for any situation where kids are feeling frustrated or upset or things are not going the way that they anticipated. I think oftentimes as parents, we really just want them to be okay. You're fine, you're okay, everything's fine. And that can sometimes feel, for children, dismissive, or they might be less inclined to share with us in the future if our response is less engaged and more kind of like, you're fine, everything's fine. So an example of what a validating response might sound like would be something like, yeah, you're frustrated, you're upset, we're so excited for this soccer season or for this play that you've worked so hard for, and now you're going to miss it, and that's really hard. I get it. So that's very different than kind of dismissing of like, oh, it's fine, everything's fine, we're going to play at home instead. So there's a big difference there in how we can kind of communicate. And then also just validating, but not piling on. I know as adults, when we're connecting with one another, we like to share our own experiences too. But if your kids are coming to you, sharing things that are making them feel upset and worried, acknowledging their worries without saying, I know, me too, when I'm nervous, grandma might get sick, or, let's not do our best, or let's do our best not to kind of pile on. I think, Megan, did we lose your screen, or is that just my screen?
Okay, I'm back. I don't know what's been going on. I'm
That's okay.
having internet troubles because it keeps sounding like you're cutting out, but then I think it's my internet. So
That's okay. I can keep going. If the screen share pops back up, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. It's just little bullet points to keep
okay.
me on track. So these are all tips really for all aged. The next slide is really talking about more developmental specific ways to communicate information. So the next point was really just things to be mindful of. So something to be especially mindful of is just media coverage. Um, that information is really for adults and can be really scary or overwhelming when children are inundated with the news. If you're someone who, likes to have the news on in the background or information on in the background and can kind of tune it out, that's something to just be mindful of when there are ears among us. Speaking of which, those adult conversations that we're having, it's difficult. I get it. We're all in these enclosed spaces, and it's just challenging to have conversations when your children are around constantly. But just really be mindful of really big, heavy topics. So if you're nervous about, we're down to our last pack of toilet paper, or food shortages, or there's no fresh produce, or I don't know what's going to happen with our jobs or our finances. So those really big, heavy conversations, just try to save them for when your children are asleep, because they are listening. They tend not to listen when you want them to, and then they listen to the things that you wish that they weren't. So just always be mindful of those really heavy, big conversations. And then just, be available for follow-up. The next slide that Megan just showed is really more of the developmental differences of what specifically you are sharing. So when I say share the facts, be short and sweet, content that you can share with different ages. Middle school and high school kids, for them, knowledge is power. So it's a good opportunity for you to use this as kind of a platform for discerning information that's credible. Read through the CDC or World Health Organization websites together and have those conversations. For elementary age children, there's obviously clearly a difference between a first grader and a fifth grader and how they process information. But as much as you can keep it short, sweet, fact-based, emphasize what the community is doing to decrease the spread and to keep them safe. So an example when talking to an elementary aged child and explaining all of this might sound something like, COVID-19 is thought to spread when someone comes in close contact with someone else, usually from a cough or a sneeze, or if someone were to touch a surface that someone else would touch soon after. Always emphasize what adults are doing. Talk about that's why things are canceled. That's why your school is closed. And then anytime you're talking about sickness, it's always helpful to talk about our immune systems as well. So for younger kids, you can talk about how, they have little superheroes inside of themselves fighting against the germs. And then for preschool age kids, so if you have a little 4-year-old at home, that this age group is very concrete. So use tangibles or dolls, a really simple way if they're bummed about, navigating this new social distancing world. You could ball up a little tissue and say it's a germ. And if you're standing close in proximity and you toss it at them and say, like, look, we're standing so close together, like you can catch the germ, but the further mommy or daddy stand and I throw it, it can't reach you. So that's why it's important for us to keep our distance from one another. So that's just kind of a concrete example, because germs, you can't see them, and it's hard for the youngsters to really grasp the concept. So yeah, those are the kind of main talking points. I hope that wasn't redundant or too simplistic, but those are some things that we just thought were relevant to share. I also have a NASP handout, our National School Association or School Psych Association handout that I can share in the comment section as well as we wrap up.
So we just wanted to pause for a minute and see if there's any comments or questions. Totally welcome at this point. that anybody wants to chime in. And you don't have to like verbally chime in. You can send a message to Sarah and she would relay it to us. Yep, so she's saying go ahead and send your questions to her. So guys, we'll give you a couple minutes on that, or if you're having anything else you need to share with us about not being able to hear us, me checking out every couple minutes. Hopefully that wasn't too disruptive. I just yelled to my family to get off the internet downstairs. So.
I'm going to try to start my video back up. Oh, there we go. So far, everybody's been really appreciative, and they want, somebody said that the example you provided for the preschooler was really helpful. One person asked, do you know any online videos for middle school students about the disease, about the current coronavirus? Okay, and that, I think what I'm going to try to do, by the way, is I'm going to maybe kind of consolidate all the information that's shared here and try to post it maybe in the event page so that everybody can go back and reference it. So did you guys want to answer about
offhand, but I wonder if the CDC would have something on their website for like older kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think middle school age children, and obviously, I mean, that's a huge middle school. There's a huge array of developmentally where they're at with processing information. But I think generally middle school, you can maybe read through certain points of the CDC or World Health Organization, dig into those and see what videos they have, little snippets and videos that are more like a cartoon characters and things that can kind of explain and describe. So that's, I would recommend that being a kind of a jumping off point as well.
We can't hear you, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, you're muted.
I can see you talking now.
Sorry. Another question was, how can we explain that this is open-ended? My 11-year-old keeps asking when we are going back to school.
Yeah. I mean, I think just we're taking it day by day and share the information that you know, and in a really fact-based way that, you know, we're all kind of in the same boat here, and it will last as long as it has to, but no longer. So, you know, everybody wants to get back to school too. So,
and I think sometimes just like acknowledging that is a good question that we all have. Like, yeah. It's frustrating, and acknowledging the frustration of that. Like I mean, I'm going crazy to think that these kids might not be going back to school throughout the rest of this year. And like, that feels really scary. And I think just being with that and being uncomfortable with that, because, you know, Allie and I and others in the field, like we talk a lot about how uncomfortable feelings and allowing us to be uncomfortable and just sitting with it and then trying to have that level of acceptance. Doesn't mean you have to like it, because believe me, I do not like this, but having that level of acceptance. And we have a video that talks about that a little bit. I think just joining with that and empathizing. I'm not sure there's a way we can make it okay, because it's not.
And sometimes those specific questions, kids are, I mean, you know your children, sometimes they really do want to know specific information, but other times they are trying to share feelings through a question. So when am I going to go back to school? That might be a perfect time for you to kind of reflect. Like, it sounds like you really miss your friends. It sounds like you really miss school. Like, that's hard. This is hard. I get it. So that might be another just really time to kind of sit with them on the fact that this is a huge bummer, and there's no, you know, easy answer at this moment right now.
Another question, what are some suggestions we can use to connect our kids with their school friends?
All of these kind of things, using the technology. I mean, as hard as this is, we are really in a great stage of our whatever technological advancement that we can still see each other, hear each other, connect with each other, play games. Like my daughter this morning was playing a charades game with her friend on FaceTime, And so they'd show the thing. So she would, she would read it or look at the picture and then act it out. And then they would guess. And so just like playing those games virtually and, using social distance if there are things. We don't really want to go into too much in terms of those guidelines because they do seem to change a lot, but, bike riding or other things that they can do that still maintains the distance. But yeah, social connection. And that is something that we talk a little bit later in this talk about thinking of ways that we can still connect in a different way.
And that's along the lines of one person asked, she was worried about the impact of social isolation on her child because it's an only child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, I don't know. What do you think, Allie? I mean, I think if there's ways, I mean, I get that worry too. If, we do try to avoid screen time. But like, for instance, I don't know if this is appropriate for every kid, but, my son does a lot with Minecraft and then he uses the home phone and he talks on Minecraft and plays the game. I mean, I know there's other ways you can do it with headsets. We're not that sophisticated. But they still get to play and talk together, doing something, finding ways, I think thinking about ways, how can you do a joint activity that's already enjoyable for you in a different format? So maybe that's sitting and generating ideas rather than thinking about what you can't do, because right now that we're kind of stuck with the reality, but like, what can we do? How can we continue to do things that are fun in a different format, a different modality?
2 more questions, and then I think we're at the end of our
move on to that. And we will have more time for questions at the end.
Yeah. 1 more, 2 more. So the one was, and I think you might actually, if I know how you guys are going, you might answer this later. So if that's, if you are, then you can say that. But how do you help build a routine for a preschooler who's used to going to preschool and now is home with parents who are trying to work? She said her preschool just wants to play all day. Unfortunately, his sister is only 4 months old.
We will talk about routines. So,
all right. So we'll hold that question for later. And then the last question is, this person is having a hard time helping my almost 5-year-old understand why they can't play with their friends that they see in their neighborhood. Any additional tips on communicating that?
So I think the age of 5, you can really use that kind of tissue example of talking about germs. You can also just, emphasize when you're talking about how we have immunities, we have these superheroes inside of our body that fight germs, but people who are already sick, they have fewer superheroes inside of their bodies. Or people who are really old, they might have fewer superheroes inside of their bodies to fight off the sickness. So it's our job, and we are in this together, to protect other people because we have superheroes. So we want to try our best to keep the tissue from spreading, keep the germ from spreading. We want to be at a safe distance. So I think just using things that are concrete and make sense, like that kind of tissue example, and then talking about just their immunities, I think would be the age of 5 would be perfect to keep it concrete as well.
Okay, so I think we're going to pause the question stuff for now, but thank you so much for participating. It's, mostly what we see, I mean, right now it's just people's names. And so, we're hoping people are engaged, so that's good for us to know that everyone's here and having the same questions we do. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit into, some of this is a little bit more about us as parents and as the adults in our kids' lives, and and then like some routines and things that we can do to help with that. So, one big thing that has come up a lot this past week, and again, it's only been a week, is, our community, our area tends to be high achievers. And I think this probably applies to many other communities too, but, Northern Virginia has its own thing. High achieving parents with, potentially two working adults in the home, or, have really just high expectations for their kids, which is great. But with that, we can kind of lose sight of what this week has really been, how hard it's really been, and that this is completely unprecedented, and that things have just changed so fast. And all of a sudden we're expected to teach our kids or take care of them or take care of them while we're working. And that, there's other big questions about the economy and availability of resources and all of that. We've had to cancel trips, and it's just, everything's just been so challenging. And that we really need to give ourselves and encourage others to give themselves just some grace for this, because if we're expecting to educate our kids at the same level that they had been educated 2 weeks ago, which, in most cases is pretty phenomenal education, it's just not really possible right now. And I'm kind of thinking this week and next week in particular as like snow days, because they're being used essentially as snow days. They're counted as that. We didn't really have many this year. That's given me permission just to like adjust. And if we do a couple of things each morning or whatever time of day works, we're doing that. And that might be reading together, letting them, like I'm on my laptop working, and there's one of my 7-year-olds sitting next to me doing a math game of math things that she's already learned, but it's using her brain. Or she read one book that had to do with making ice cream. So she read the book, and then we made a 3-ingredient ice cream with ingredients that we had or that actually are on the shelves. So just doing like really small things that keep their brains functioning. But even if you didn't even do that, and you just snuggled together and watched a movie or baked or did something over the course of the day, or, we're having other opportunities to go for walks or play family board games or other things that maybe we don't always have time to with all the activities that we do. And then this image I think was really helpful, of, letting go of what we can't control. There's so much right now that we can't. And this image, and this does come through, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we can't control the amount of toilet paper at the store. We can't control how long this will last, how other people react. If other people, this can be challenging. If other people are following the rules, we can communicate them, we can share our concern, but we can't really control that. Predicting what will happen, like that one question about how can we predict going back to school and all of that. But if you put all your energy into these things in the circle, that goes a long way. So we can control our attitude. We can turn off the news, and just get, a snippet in the morning and in the evening. The talking heads are going to talk about it all day long. Finding fun things to do at home, kind of making that list, taking dinner time and getting out a whiteboard or a piece of paper and writing down all the things that we can do now, that are fun and exciting. I mean, I think some kids are finding some aspects of this kind of exciting. Others aren't and are over it already. But, we can limit our social media. I do think that social media, it has its pros and its cons. And I think the connection that it's offered has been helpful for me. And just all the cool things that we've seen. And we're going to talk about that a little later too. What time is it? Yeah, we better kind of get moving on. Anyway, and how we're going to handle our social distancing and how we're going to follow those recommendations. So those are some things. And then just, this was a little meme that we found that we thought was helpful. Oops. Okay. There's no academic emergency this week. We're not homeschoolers. Like, that's the other thing, is we didn't sign up to be homeschool parents. Parents who do homeschool, they chose it. They thought about it. They talked with their significant other. They made a plan. They looked at curriculums. They joined a co-op, all the things that people do as homeschoolers. That's not what we're doing. We're thrown into this. And when our country's in crisis and we're all stressed and tired, and so stressed adults cannot teach stressed children. It's a neurobiological impossibility. So we have to try focusing on connections and feelings of safety. So just kind of letting it go to some degree, and then slowly building that in. I mean, if we are, and taking the lead of the teachers in the school system. Okay. So Allie, we're getting close to the end. So I think we're going to have to go through this a little quickly. But we might be able to add in other sessions and maybe have them be more on different age groups. So let's kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, so realistic expectations, Megan covered a lot of this, but the main gist, we're not the great thing about technology is there is access to so many resources, but it's kind of a double-edged sword where you can feel inundated, like trying to drink from a fire hose with so much information that it's information overload.
That's
So
what I felt this week. I felt that like seeing all of these, I'm telling you, how many color-coded agendas and schedules have you guys seen? And you know what? That works amazingly well for some families, and others, it just feels like you can't compare yourself to people for whom that does work. Maybe they've already kind of been in that direction. So it's okay. You're overwhelmed.
Yeah. And these bullet points we're not trying to add on to all the things you feel like you already need to do. More just peel it back and say focus on the essentials at this point. Go outside. Obviously, it's a moving target as far as social distancing and what we can and can't do. I've been fortunate to find some big open fields, or we start the morning outside. It's less congested, and then can kind of start the day in a more mindful way. Encouraging a lot of free play. Sometimes we feel as parents like free play is wasted time, but children are learning through play, and they are processing their thoughts and feelings and emotions through play at all ages. So free play, encourage it. Provide choices and assign responsibility. All of us feel a bit powerless right now in this moment. So as much ownership that you can give to your children and giving them options. Would you like to do this first or this first? Would you like this snack or this snack? That can really help them feel more power in a situation. Use technology and don't feel bad about it. I mean, just don't use it for educational purposes. Use it for connecting with their friends, set up virtual play dates, use it for comfort, have movie nights. You know, you're the pilot of the plane. If it means you've got to fly the plane, kids get on Netflix for a while, then that's perfectly okay. Structure, there was a question about setting up a structure. So the color-coded schedules are great. Kids do need predictability, they need structure, but this is going to evolve in time. And so if you're not sure how to start, or if you're in your family, every day is different and unpredictable, you can just have a piece of paper with 2 squares and you have Post-it notes or whatever. And first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. So you can just take it, not just day by day, but even kind of moment by moment, you know.
Yeah.
First, we're going to
something academic they can do, or something, you know, they do that, and then you can play a game with, like, maybe you have to do a little bit of work and then you can play a game with them, or
if they're Post-it notes too, then they can just, you know, once they've done it, they move it off, then they move it over, and then they're moving their next one. So you kind of give them some autonomy in that task too. Mindfulness and guided relaxation, I just listed some things. It's a great opportunity to practice some mindfulness and deep breathing. There's a lot of really great things for even very young children that they can do. And even if you need a couple moments, it's a great to kind of set them up in a calm activity. As far as it relates to academics, I know that we're all in this together, but everybody has very unique situations, and it can feel more of an emergency if you have a child who has some significant social, emotional, behavioral, academic challenges. But take it a day at a time, focus on those connections and the essentials, and just know that more information will be coming out.
Teachers really are. I mean, at least in Fairfax County, and I'm sure, and I know a lot of the other counties are doing different things, and I'm sure private schools, they're working and they're trying to figure this out now. But there's just equity. I mean, it seems that everybody here has access to computers and Wi-Fi, but not, certainly not everybody does. So they're really working through those factors before they can send some things out. I mean, that's just what my teacher friends have been sharing.
So, I mean, just as really of all of this is we hope that, just giving yourself a break, and, do you typically have your children use technology for the time that you're allowing them now? Probably not, but you need to do what you need to do to get things done during your day. So that's really what's most important at this time, and to have those connections, to be silly. And we do an after dinner dance party where we all play music, a couple songs, and just be silly and ridiculous. And even if it's just 5 minutes of silliness where everyone's dancing around, or something like that, those are the things that children will remember about these times. So even if it's just a 5-minute silly dance, you know, put on your silly face and make it happen. So it's just
But
some
the other thing
tips.
that families are doing, like with older kids, is I'm sure there's many examples that everybody could come up with, but yeah, on TikTok, right? But also just like going back into like old school movies. Like my daughter watched Parent Trap, and we started to watch Sister Act 2, and we're talking about League of Their Own, like Goonies, like all those old 80s and 90s movies that we liked back in the day, and bringing those back and finally having time. We don't have to rush off to all the activities. So okay, so now let's see what time. Okay, I think we have time for this, and then we'll start wrapping up. Okay, so this is, Allie, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. So this is just a 5-minute framework. It's a counselor at a church in Texas, and she just really conceptualizes this situation in, I think, a really succinct, clear way, and how it is important for
everyone.
Oops, sorry.
to take care of our own mental health in all of this, so that we can better serve our families.
Yeah, and so Allie actually reached out to this therapist herself to ask if it was all right to share with you guys. We thought it was helpful. And so this is mostly about us as the adults, and thinking about it, especially with older kids, but because if we're not well, then the rest of the family can suffer. So noticing where we are.
Hey everyone, this is my first time to do Facebook Live, but I wanted to just pop in for a minute and talk about what we can be doing as we're walking out this COVID-19 situation. I'm a counselor. I work with a lot of people. I've been talking to a lot of friends, talking to a lot of clients, talking to my own therapist about how do we live out what's happening in our world one day at a time. And so I just wanted to share with you guys a quick little framework to help put into words something that might be useful for you as you're walking this out. So, here's the framework. Imagine you are on a road, and this is the road of acceptance. So living on this road of acceptance is a place where we feel okay, where when life throws stuff at us, we can be okay. We feel okay in our bodies, we feel connected to other people. What happens that shoots us off the road is when change happens. Our nervous system is wired to code change as a threat. And so when things in life start changing, it feels kind of scary. And so it's hard for us to accept it. And so when change is happening, we kind of go into two different ditches. We go into this ditch of resignation. So resignation in this situation can look like either denial, like, hey, it's just not that big a deal. I'm going to live my life. I don't need to wash my hands extra. I'm just going to do what I want to do. That could look like resignation. Resignation can also look like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. We're all going to get sick, and going to this like worst case scenario. Everyone is going to die. This is going to be awful, and it's never going to end. So that can also look like this ditch of resignation. Over here, what I would kind of say is like this frantic or anger response. And so when we're over in this ditch, in this situation, it can look like hoarding. Oh my gosh, I cannot handle the change that is happening in my life. And so I'm going to go gather all the things, get more than I need. We're going to be moving around frantically, trying to prepare. It can look like having a really short fuse because life is not okay and we don't feel okay. And so we get really short with people that we love. It can look like hypervigilance, just being like so scared and aware of everything that's happening. It can look like being really judgy, because when we're in this ditch, we kind of think everyone else should be in this ditch too. So we can get really judgy. It can look like going overboard with like preparations and those type of things. And then there's another option. That's not the road and it's not the ditches. And this is my little spacecraft. And this is what we do when we don't want to be on the road and we don't want to be in the ditches. We just want out. And this is actually like mood altering substances. So this can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be pornography, it can be disordered eating, anything that kind of alters our state so we don't have to be in this situation anymore. Not a healthy choice because you end up back here anyways. but you feel a lot worse off. And you're not actually doing the work to stay on the road of acceptance. And so, how do we stay on the road? So, it looks like naming our feelings, actually being aware of like what I'm feeling and where it's coming from. I don't think in some of the older generations have experienced quarantines before, but it's new for us. And so to be in a situation where, usually when life gets hard, there's like one or two areas that go off the rails. But to be in a situation where seemingly every area of life feels off the rails, it's really overwhelming. And it's okay that it feels overwhelming. But if we can start putting words to that, like, gosh, I'm having to homeschool my kid. I wasn't expecting that. I have to arrange childcare. And I need to figure out what my employment situation is going to look like, what savings going to look like, how I'm going to handle finances, how this impacts my relationships, being cooped up at home with all these people all the time, and I can't get away. And so there's so many things that we need to put words to. The fear that we have, the grief, the incredible losses that we are experiencing, loss of vacation, loss of our coping skills. We can't go to the gym. We can't do all these things that we do to keep ourselves sane. It's an incredible amount of loss. And the more we can put words to the feelings that we have, it helps us to stay on the road. And it's helpful to do that with other people. So to read from sources that have always brought you comfort is a good choice. And then also connecting with others. So using platforms like Marco Polo, where you can leave video messages for your friends, that's fantastic. Show up to your virtual community group meetings. Attend online church on Sunday mornings. Connect, worship, do these things that fill us up. And maybe schedule a happy hour girls' night, but using the Zoom platform, so we're still being connected to each other. It helps us stay on this road and keep our sanity and not end up in these ditches or checking out. Other things that can help, just being out in nature, go sit in the sunshine, doing things that allow us to use our creativity, so creating, baking, doing art, doing those kind of things, doing at-home workouts can be helpful. And also engaging in things that like ideas that like get us energized and excited, having someone to talk to. So even you introverts out there that love ideas and think all you need is a book, we'll call your other nerdy friends and have a conversation about what you're learning. That can be really fun in the midst of all this. So if this has been helpful for you, I linked to.
Okay, and Sarah just messaged me as well. So we will share the link to the video on the events page, and we will also post some additional documents and references as well. But we will share, we have the link, but we'll share it with you guys.
Yeah, I just think that I'm glad Ellie found that. And I just feel like it really gives us an idea of what our goals kind of are. Our goals are to be that level of acceptance. And again, acceptance does not mean liking it. It doesn't. It's just accepting where we are and what we can do about it. But not everyone's going to be in that place easily. And maybe you have other stressors going on, or maybe there's other just big things, or your own kind of emotional makeup. That's okay. And so, beyond finding ways to connect with yourself and practicing self-care, like she talked about, if you do feel like you're really kind of going in one of those ditches or above in the hovercraft often, then it might be time to kind of seek some more individualized support. So teletherapy is, talking like this, one-on-one with a therapist. And the therapy, the barriers to that have been in place, just, a lot of therapists it felt like, oh my gosh, how do I even do that? Like, all I know is face-to-face, and face-to-face is great. I mean, you do get a lot from somebody in their, actual environment, but, it's not really possible right now. So they've, all the professional organizations and the insurance companies, and they've really kind of dropped a lot of those barriers for the time being. And I'm in some, networks with other psychologists, and there's a lot of opportunity now to be doing that and to be trying it out. So even Psychology Today, I have that referenced here. They actually sent out, I have a bio on there. It's Psychology Today, the magazine, also has a whole section for advertising mental health services for kids, for adults, for anybody. And they, prompted they send a prompt out to everybody who has a profile to add, are you willing to do teletherapy? And, kind of what are you doing during this time? Are you still seeing clients? Are you still accepting new clients? All of that. So that is an option. And then just kind of a little note about our practice. The website is there. Our focus is mostly with kids and teens. We do, like we said, we do a lot of assessment for things like learning disabilities, ADHD, but several of us are open to doing some teletherapy, and we're working out the logistics of that. But we're getting ready to roll on that. So if that's something that you feel like you need something more and you want to reach out to us and see if we might be a match for you, especially as it relates to potentially consultation. So you talking about your concerns about your kids or your family and your functioning, we can help individually work through that, create those schedules, or kind of work with the emotions that come up. And especially with older kids and teens, we can do some talk therapy, and maybe in smaller doses, because we might be doing more games and activities with kids when we're in the office, but we might do a short session with the kids and then complete it with you guys. So anyway, there's a lot of options out there. If it is something you might be interested in and want to give us a call, you would talk to a psychologist, and kind of, she would help field your questions, and we'd be happy to help. And if we can't help, then we can see who else might be able to. So that's like the content that we have. We have, oh my gosh, it's almost 4:00. So what other questions are coming up that we can answer pretty quickly, and then we can probably have to wrap up.
I'll try to get my video back on. There we go. Hi.
Hi.
So far, everybody's been, the comments have been super positive, and just thank you so much, they say. One comment, and for everyone participating, if you want to type a question, go ahead. Now is the time. But when you guys were talking about like the Northern Virginia overachievers, everybody said, you're right on. We are overachievers, feeling out of control, expecting we can do it all, and feeling like we are failing in all parts, working at home, teaching, and having fun. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate it. So because there are less participants, I'm going to try and experiment and see if I can unmute for, and then somebody else said a big thank you. So glad I attended. Thank you for hosting. I'm going to let you guys have the ability to unmute yourself. And so if you have a question, you can. So
yeah, we don't have like a hard stop. I mean, we want to wrap up, fairly soon to, protect
right.
your, but we don't have a hard stop at 4, so we can answer some questions.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, if you want to, you can unmute yourself. If this becomes like a free for all and we're too much, then I'll go back to muting you. But if anybody has a question.
Yeah, or a comment or something to share too. So if there's something
you can still comment, of course,
that works for your family that you think might be helpful for others.
Oh, also, just to let everybody know, we are going to, I have recorded, although I didn't start recording until like a few minutes in, so I apologize, but I will post all of the information on the event page on Facebook, and I'm going to try to figure out what other technological wonderful things I can do with that and let you know. And if you want to be on an email list to know about further events, because I think this has been a good resource and successful, and I think people will want more, go ahead and send me an email, and it's just Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at abidingpresence.net, and I will put you on an email list to let you know of future events coming up. So that's Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at abidingpresence.net. All right, anybody want to ask any questions?
No.
Everybody's shy now that they can talk.
Did anything come through in the chat that?
Nothing more, mostly thank you. So yeah, no other questions. So I think you guys can probably wrap it up. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Joining
Yeah,
us.
that's good. We did want to leave just kind of ending on a positive note. You probably have seen the Mr. Rogers thing that every time we have some sort of crisis in our country, this seems to float around. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would always say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. That this can be a way. And the other thing, we were going to spend a little bit of time, if we had time at the end, to just kind of share. And, just for right now, it's probably going to be just share within yourself and notice, and maybe share with people around you. Maybe at dinner time, you kind of share what kind of creativity, what inspired you, what positive things that you've noticed over the course of this day, this week. Because there's really a lot of cool stuff happening, and people kind of coming together and helping other people to get through this. So noticing those things can help us feel better too.
Thank you. Thank you
for having us to talk with everybody.
Thank you for hosting this and for your participation. We hopefully can follow up soon.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Good. You are the helpers this help, feeling a bit tearful in a good way, because I can admit I can't do it all and I am not alone. I think that speaks for all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you. I'll give you guys just a few more minutes to, talk if you want to. And like I said, I will put this, as soon as I figure out how, I will put this onto the event page, and any of the PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff. We'll have all that information on there. And email me if you want to be on future mailing lists for these events. And
and if we have other events like this, it'll be shared in the same way, and maybe even with, probably, we wanted to get something going. Like, we only just started working on this week. We might have more time in advance to share when the events are.
Right. Yes. This was like I think you guys did a great job, and this was a great turnaround for, we just wanted to give a little bit of hope and encouragement in a crazy time. So yeah, again, email me if you want it, and in about a couple of minutes, I'll close the meeting. But thank you guys again for joining. Thank you, Megan and Allie, for your encouraging and helpful words. I appreciate it.